were on with Josh, who kind of got thrown under the bus when we did one with Will Smith.
Oh, really?
I mean, not really. I mean,
Yeah.
in a Will Smith sort of way. How you and Will were like a big impact on Josh. Like, and we had talked about that with Josh, so it wasn't anything bad. But
Josh Josh has come a long way. He now has twin girls, coaching at Villanova. I think he's doing just fine now.
Yeah, he's a good dude for sure. So yeah, I mean, and you guys have come a long way too. I started talking Gabe specifically. I've known Rosh for a long time, but Gabe, I've started talking to you. Has it been 2 years ago now, or
maybe
it's been a while?
Yeah,
but I wanted to get the details on this photography contest. There's so many cool photographs that I saw from North American soccer. Give me the lowdown on that and what it was and what you guys were trying to accomplish with it.
Yeah, totally. And thanks, thanks again for having us, Scott. Really, really appreciate it.
Open door with you guys. Whenever you want.
Yeah. No, thank you. I was gonna tell you the photo contest. So this was our second year running it. We really enjoyed it last year because of the way we've set up ClubEleven. Most of our community does appreciate photography a lot, and with soccer ending around November, December, most leagues, and then kicking off in March, kind of gives us this 2 to 3 month period where everybody's kind of in limbo. And last year with the photo contest, it was a great way for us to kind of look at the 2022 season, and the best possible highlights is everybody submitting photos, and that was a great way to not just cap off a season, but also kick off a new one, looking back and then starting off from that. And so the 2023 one, so the one that we just ran, I guess, it ended a month ago, but that one was very similar to last one. We had 3 categories, it's growing the game, match action, and soccer fandom. And yeah, I think in terms of the photo contest process, we got, we went out and spoke to 5 people in the, photo or soccer photo industry that are very, super, super talented, and they all represent, the best of this community, I would say. Some of them are team photographers, some of them shoot for agencies, some of them shoot for their own outlets, but it's people that, they know photography, and those were our judges for this year. And yeah, we kicked off. We had about, Rosh, and I can't remember the actual number. I think it was around 500 photos submitted this year across all 3 categories. So the judges had a lot to review from. It was props to them, because I don't know how they did it, but they narrowed it down from those 500 in a matter of 2 weeks. They narrowed it down to 15 finalists, so 5 per category. And from then on, that's when we opened it up to the community vote. So that's when we uploaded those 15 photos across the 3 categories onto a type form, which is, it's I would just say like a fancier and unreasonably expensive Google Forms, but it does the job. It looked pretty. And yeah, from then, people vote, they pick their favorite photo. We had about, I think it was 1,700 votes this year, so it was really cool to see the turnout and people supporting their communities. We had in total, it was 5 prizes, but we had 4 winners. There was 1 winner that won 2 awards. We had a winner from Vermont, from Orlando, from Portland, and I'm blanking on the last one. Roshan, do you remember?
Me too, bro. Me too.
I can go in the.
No disrespect, but
no. It was Let me check it out, because
what was so I had growing the game, match action. What was the 3rd category?
Soccer Fandom, and actually that is the photo. So it was a beautiful photo from, I think it was Steven Nadler, and he shot it in Mexico. It's a great shot of it's a kid basically controlling a soccer ball, and the shadows, the composition. It's beautiful. So that one won the Soccer Fandom category, I think. And yeah, overall, kind of to recap why we did the photo contest, it was, again, it was a great way to connect with the community, and for us to kind of kick off the year internally. Like it helped us a lot. It gives us structure. But I spoke to one of the winners after the contest. His name is Spencer Powell, out in Vermont, and he shoots Vermont green. He shot this great photo of the fans, and he kind of, we talked about the contest, like what, he kind of shared with me what his point of view on it was, like, what it meant for him to win it, and how the whole process went for him. And after hearing how much it meant to Spencer, and how enjoyable the experience had been, and how much it meant for him to, his whole community backed him. It was Vermont Greens community. They blew it away. Really, they came out, and the votes were almost overwhelming. Like a lot of people from Vermont, and I thought personally, that was beautiful, because and him and I were talking about it, but for a national contest, right, where you have photos from, I think obviously there's hundreds of teams in the U.S., but there's 2-3 very prominent leagues, and then a team like Vermont who's been around for less than 4 or 5 years, and then winning the contest was awesome. And I think it represents the whole idea behind the contest. Is there's soccer everywhere. We want to showcase it, and you'd never know like where you'd find the biggest gems. So yeah,
very cool. Yeah, it's remarkable, like Vermont Green, and how engaged with the community those USL Two clubs are. They're USL Two, I believe, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Like them, and there's one in Newport News called Lions Bridge that I'm aware of. That I mean, they sell out their stadium. It's crazy how much fandom there is, and I think it's you chose 3 really good categories. Tell me how you landed on those and decided to go with 3 categories.
Yeah, actually, this was something we spoke with the judges afterwards. So we had a debrief call, and we got some great feedback on them. I think the reasoning behind it is, at the end of the day, it's a contest that ClubEleven put forward, and we have full control, I think, of how you set it up, and that was something that we really enjoyed, right? You don't have to get super generic with the categories. And I think with having growing the game in Soccer Fandom, we decided to really lean on I guess it would be photography that you don't necessarily see on the field, and match action was kind of an all encompassing category that I think it had its flaws, right? Because you can put celebrations into match action, you can put match action into match action, you can put practically anything that's on the field. So next year, that's something we're definitely gonna adjust a little bit, maybe split that one into 2 categories. The judges and from the feedback form that we got afterwards, some great things there, like a lot of good ideas on how to improve it. But for this year in particular, we chose to go with growing the game and Soccer Fandom as 2 of the 3 categories, just because we felt like it represented what ClubEleven wants to get across. And in our own photography, personally, we don't we're not always looking for the shot of a player heading the ball in the middle of the field, or like a goalkeeper kicking a goal kick. That's not to say that can be a great photo, right? There's some great images of that across leagues, across the world. But again, for our own contest, that wasn't something that we've always like focused too much on. So we decided to lean a little bit more on Fandom, growing the game, and trying to see, the diversity and the variety of soccer, not only soccer fans, but just soccer in general that we have across the US, right? I mean, it was, for me personally, like growing the game has always been my favorite category, just because of seeing how people interpret that particular prompt. And yeah, I think that's, that one I don't see changing much in the next few years. I think that one's going to stick by.
I think to kind of add to that, at this holistic level, right? Like growing the game, I think, is something that a lot of people in America are aware of. The fact that it's growing so fast, it's on TV everywhere. You have access to a lot of teams in a lot of places. And just to kind of give folks some context on, ClubEleven and who we are and what we do, we're trying to be the North American soccer media brand. And we obviously create a lot of great content, but part of kind of the ethos of this North American soccer photo contest was we want to highlight all of the things that may go unnoticed in mainstream media. And over the last 5 years, Gabe and Pablo have built an amazing network of soccer photographers, videographers, influencers. And these people, I think, associate with us in a lot of ways because we do things just a little bit differently. We're not necessarily interviewing the biggest names in America or the biggest athletes. We're not interviewing the biggest teams, but we are going into grassroots communities and really trying to find the stories that resonate with normal human beings. And maybe we'll get into this today or tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but next time. But, Gabe and Pablo's story as Peruvian kids that grew up in Peru playing street soccer and moving to cold New Hampshire, around the age of 12, I think speaks a lot to the American audience that we have, in the sense of a lot of us come from a lot of different backgrounds, right? And the way in which we associate the game with the game is different for all of us. I played college soccer, or youth soccer into college soccer. Gabe played growing up in Peru, went to University of Maryland, and started covering matches that way. And something that I'd prefer if Gabe spoke to was something that stood out for me was Gabe came to America not really knowing much about North American soccer. But when you actually get inside these communities, see the people playing, talk to them, you realize that this culture is truly unique, unlike anything else in the world in a lot of ways. And I think, part of our mission is really trying to tell the North American soccer story the right way and trying to kind of drive the right narrative. I think when you read a lot of articles, see a lot of headlines, the narrative we're building as a country, I think, is very different than the narrative that I think people want to know or hear more about. And so, I think our evolution over the last few years has been tremendous. We have a great plan for this year around how we activate more with our community on the ground and on social media. But ultimately, right, we're trying to create this ecosystem really centered around storytelling. And I think over the next few weeks, months, and years, you'll start to see ClubEleven kind of become a household name in that North American soccer space. And so, I thought that was important, especially when you talk about the growth of soccer. I think how people perceive growth is very different, but for us, it's really about growing the grassroots game first and elevating a lot of people that are a part of that. And, that's one of the reasons Gabe and I think, have gotten along really well over the last few years, and we've built that relationship. And, we've built a really great team at ClubEleven that, individually, we kind of have our own little soccer crews, but collectively, I think we come together in a lot of fun ways. And it's created a really, really great place for people to learn about the game with people who just want to grow it,
Yeah. Yeah, it's I just had the founders of soccer.com on, and when they founded soccer.com in 1984, there was one soccer match on TV that year.
Wow.
and last year there was 3,000. So soccer is becoming a part of America. Like it or not, some people it's here and it's not going away.
Yeah.
So yeah, Gabe, I mean, get into your story. That's awesome. Like kicking the ball around in Peru and what it must have been like, just the culture shock to go to New Hampshire. I mean, aside from the climate, but
Yeah.
tell that story.
No, yeah. I
He was
mean,
a
I'll try
feisty little
to.
left back too, or lefty. So we eye to eye on a lot of things.
I'll try. I'll try to keep it uh not too long, but yeah. I mean, I was pretty lucky that in Lima, where I grew up, I think we were like we had a pretty like stable situation. I would say like my access to soccer was pretty like as easy as I can say it could be. I mean, we lived in a it was like these, I don't know what you call it, like there's a lot of like apartment complexes, and then there's kind of like a community pitch on the back. It's like a cement court. So for me, I could just kind of wake up on any given day, any given Saturday, Sunday, go down and play. Could come back after school on a weekday, meet up with the other kids and go play. And I have a twin brother, Pablo, who we run ClubEleven together with Roshan, Tyler, and Kiros. But with him, and again, I think this is, I don't know what it comes down to, but just blessed to have somebody like that, right? To grow up with, that likes the same things as you. So I always had somebody to kick around with, right? I could, and I know I kind of made him be goalkeeper most of the time, so I feel very sorry about that. But yeah, we'd go out, we go play, and that was that. Like every day you could do it. You go to school, you play in recess, same thing. And so we had 10 years like that, and in 2010 we, my family and I, we moved to New Hampshire, to Hanover, New Hampshire, and it was, it's kind of, yeah, I think when how Roshan put it, right, it's kind of a little bit of a shock, right? And I was lucky enough, I spoke some English, right? I learned a bit in school back home, but uh, I think the main way for my brother and I where we made friends was kicking a soccer ball, and it was with most of the other international kids at the time. With up in New Hampshire, I think there were like two more, so it was like a group of four kids just kicking a ball. And you talk to people, and then you learn that there's ways to join teams, right? We learned about I can't remember what the academy was called. I think it was Lightning Soccer, um, in Hanover, New Hampshire. And I remember going home and like talking about it with my dad and with Pablo, and it was just so expensive, and it's so out of like your reach. It's not like anybody can just walk in and afford that. And for us, we just decided at the time like it wasn't something that we were gonna put too much time on, and or try to join that. I think we played with them for about 6 months, and back home, we were playing in the school team basically every week. So that changed, and I think gradually we started playing less and less, right? It became less accessible the more you learned about it. The soccer games were 2 hours away on weekends. You couldn't. I moved here with my dad and my three brothers. We just couldn't do that on a weekend. We just had other stuff to do, and yeah, we spent 3 years there. I think it kind of lost a little bit of touch with the sport, and I don't think that's anybody's like fault. It's just the way it was set up. And yeah, then 2014 moved down to Maryland, and I think in middle school and high school, I think in Maryland we saw a lot more soccer. I was never good enough to play in like an actual team, right? But when I'm talking about playing soccer, I just mean in lunch or with your friends after school on like a rec team maybe. So that was all available in Maryland, and that was really cool. And I think that's when my brother and I started playing a lot more. And then we went to college in UMD, University of Maryland. It's College Park, so They obviously have a very, very good soccer program. Soccer is their, I think it's like it must be their most winning sport, I'm guessing. I mean, those guys, like the year we started college in 2018, I'm pretty sure they won the championship that year. So the culture is there, right? You get a little more, you start getting closer to the sport. So for me, I think the more like south I kept moving down the eastern United States, like the more I kept finding soccer. It was like the closer I get to home, the closer I'm
Where are you now,
connecting.
by the way? Where are you now, bro?
I'm in Miami now, so I'm getting closer. I'm getting closer. But yeah, like to kind of cap off on that, and to get to Roshan's point, like I think for me, at least in 2018, right when we started college, that was around the time when Rooney was in DC United, Luciano Acosta was in DC United, one of my favorite players, and that was one of the reasons I started going to Audi Field with Pablo. We loved the team, and I think once we had been to RFK before to a couple matches, but the fact that Audi Field was a little closer to us, and the train and everything, like the games are super accessible. And when we got to the stadium the first time, you kind of just realize like, hey, this is pretty cool. Like not only you had these two super talented players on the pitch, and obviously everybody, all the players around them as well, but the fans, like they were super into it. I think obviously now in DC, like something's changed, but back then it was very, 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 I don't know how to say it, just very rich, I guess, in the atmosphere. And yeah, we really we loved it, and we started, I think, ever since then. Back then we were trying to cover mainly Peruvian players, but the more and more we went to games, and then you start reading or going to USL games and WSL games, you start seeing all these different communities, all these things that the game has to offer here when it comes to stories. Like you start learning about it, you start reading, you talk to people, you ask them why they go to the games, why they support these clubs. And I think that's that's been our story for the last 5-6 years. It's just learning and sharing what we're learning. Because, looking back to, I can even point to like 2017, if it was before my brother and I went to college, but I knew nothing about, MLS. I didn't know USL existed. I barely knew MLS existed, actually. I'm not, I think for a while, maybe I would have been a little ashamed to even admit that, but I think you gotta, that's being honest. I had no idea about any of that. It wasn't something that I was particularly interested in either. I think when you come from a South American background, a lot of the times you're used to, Boca Juniors, River Plate, Millonarios, like all the big teams down there, and you point at that and it's like, hey, that's what it's supposed to look like, and European soccer as well goes hand in hand with that. And for me, looking into our own backyard, it was never something that I was too interested in. But once we did, and once we took that jump, and once we started taking part on what we have right here, right, and in our home, right, in the US, I think that's when we fell in love with it, and we still are in love with it. It's a beautiful game, right? And like Roshan said, it's so unique, in its own ways, right? It has its flaws, but I personally, and I think most of us at ClubEleven agree that the flaws don't outweigh the positives. The uniqueness, in my opinion, is a very big positive, and the fact that a lot of the trajectory seems to be pushing upward, not just in terms of revenue, but in terms of just fandom and just everything that surrounds the game that has nothing to do with money. I think there's a lot of positives to be found there, and yeah, we keep learning, and we keep falling more and more in love with soccer here.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rosh.
No, I was just going to say, just to kind of track back a little bit and kind of make the match play connection, Scott. Gabe made a comment around him not being good enough to play. And I've seen this guy play, and he is absolutely good enough to play in college. And I think the fact that there are people out there that might not believe that because maybe the accessibility isn't there. I think that's one of the most powerful things of match play, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to educate parents and students and college coaches around the fact that, hey, there are these pipelines into college soccer or pro soccer, but these pipelines aren't built for everyone. They're built for a very specific audience that unfortunately has to have money. And I'm just touching on one aspect of it, but it made me connect the dots a little bit, especially with what you're doing. And as I applied to college soccer, like I was the first in my family to go to college, and my dad or mom didn't know much about the recruiting process. And if it wasn't for me being on a team where other players were also being recruited, I don't know where I would have ended up, or if I would have played soccer in college. So I think that kind of full circle moment is something that a lot of people are working to kind of bridge the gap on. I don't know how far we are from achieving, a situation where a coach goes out to a street court and finds a kid and is like, hey, like, let's bring that kid in to practice. It just doesn't happen that way now, which is unfortunate. But I think it's something that folks should be aware of, because like, not everyone's going to go play D1 soccer. Not everyone's going to go play D3 soccer. But there are a lot of kids that have opportunities to play the sport, but they just don't have the information, And I use Gabe's example as a prime example of, this kid is feisty. This kid is good. He's quick. He can hit the ball. And I'm like, dude, you could have played for sure. But, from his perspective, he just maybe had no idea,
Right.
Yeah. No, that's to add on to Roshan's, right? Because I think when we met about and we spoke about match play, I guess 2 years ago now. I think I spoke to you about my little brother, Diego, but he was, I think he was in my family, right? He was and probably still is, right, the most talented one when it comes to soccer. But with him, right, my brother Pablo, he tried to help him as much as he could with getting all the right information, not only to try to play college soccer, but also just for college in general, right? Like you get your school counselors and stuff, but there's only so much they can help you with, especially for even though my parents they both went to college, but in a different country, so they had no idea how it worked here, and that's just for college in general, right? It's even more of a I don't know if it's called a gray area, or even more of like a mystery when it comes to soccer, right? Because it's such a specific thing, and it seems so foreign almost. Like it's like a different language. A lot of there's no playbook or step-by-step thing that you can follow when it comes to that. So yeah, just adding on to what Roshan said, I think that the match play mission is I love what you guys are doing, and like I'm glad that you're still going at it, because I know, and I think Roshan as well, like we've both seen how much that can help somebody. And yeah, last thing on that, hopefully one day there are people that are, coaches that are picking up kids from, like, they go to courts, and you'll find some talent, and maybe one day we'll get to that point. But we got to start somewhere. So yeah.
That's right. It's interesting. I talked to the founder of a company called, or not company, a club called Brooklyn United. It was there's two clubs that he started. The first one was Park Slope United, up in Brooklyn, and then he added an upper level called Brooklyn United. And one of the things they have to do every week is just go play futsal in a park. And like the parents, they come and bring food and probably some adult beverages on a Friday evening, and their kids just play. There's no there's no coaches, there's no real structure. They organize themselves, and it's manufactured, but it's really important in development to just play. right? And that's hopefully like a growing trend. And I think that coaches do go to basketball courts and find kids, but I haven't heard of that happening on a soccer field or futsal court yet. But yeah, hopefully that's coming. And you guys are doing so much to just grow grassroots awareness. And I mean, like, some of the photos were incredible, but like the stories that you guys are telling, and like you said, it's not like the obvious people all the time in the people that you profile. So talk about like how you came up with the idea. And I love that you fell in love with covering this and creating kind of I don't know, a landing spot for some of these stories. And it's just so cool. But and we'll get into like some other parts of what you're doing, but talk about like how you came to start profiling players and what you're accomplishing with that.
So I think originally in 2018, my brother Pablo, he was and still is, a fantastic writer. He loves writing and soccer, so it's kind of the best combination you can get there. But back then we were doing mainly soccer photography, and we were writing about matches, right? We were talking about it's very centric on weekends. You kind of depended on a good game happening to get a story there. And I'm not going to say we were doing like a blog per weekend, but we were trying to write about stuff that was happening and keeping up with it. And obviously the photography was a big part of it. But in 2020 with the pandemic and everything, I think by that point we had tried doing one interview in like 2 years, and we loved it. Like, we enjoyed doing it. It was with a player called Johannes Bergman. We did it in 2019. He was, I think, a center back for UMD. He had a great story. We did an interview with him, and we loved it, but we saw how much, the production took a lot to get that done. And at that point, it was cool, but we didn't think much of it in terms of how it related to our strategy. So in 2020, when MLS, the NWSL, USL, a majority of the leagues stopped their play for, I think it was about like 4 or 5 months, and then they kicked off again from the stands. You could only shoot from the stands in September, I think. But that kind of gave us 2020 was like really special, just because it gave us not to say, obviously it was a horrible year for a majority, and like we all had to deal with the pandemic, but I think in terms of what it allowed us to do, like, it gave us time to think and to realize, hey, we can start doing a lot of the things that we wanted to do, and because you have like basically a full year to plan out whatever you want to do next year. And that year we were doing a podcast throughout 2020. We were talking to creators, we were talking to photographers, and we were doing that podcast with it was with Dave Williamson in Atlanta, who's also a photographer, and Nick Picori in Tampa was also a photographer, and it was my brother and I as well. We were just interviewing people across the country. That's how we met, a lot of our really good friends now. But that was kind of a leeway into what was to come next. That's when I think Pablo, for one, he started leaning a lot more on interviews. Like, he really enjoyed talking to people and interviewing people. And at the start of 2021, we did a rebrand. We kind of put together our new logo, colorways, the fonts, all that stuff. And we decided that year we wanted to tell one editorial story per week. So at the start of the year, we knew we were going to tell 52 stories in a year. We had a newsletter, we set everything up, and that's how they were getting deployed. And we did it. We ended up telling 52 stories a year. I hate talking about it as like a number, because that's not what they were to us, not what they are at all. It was it was 52 people that we spoke to, and that as a team, as a team of photographers, writers, like, we all went out and we tried to tell their story as best as we could. and that's really how we got into the profiles that you see today. Right now, you see a mix of editorial work, which is more of this long form, and we're getting more into video now as well, where we try to profile not just players but characters in the soccer space that are making a change, and it can be a personal change for them, right? It can be something that they did, almost like, I think people call it self-improvement. Everybody has a story to tell, and I think for us, we always learn something from the people that we talk to. Either they're creating something, they they did something that maybe they don't even realize that is so special. And that's why when we source stories, we don't do it, we don't look at somebody's accolades or how many trophies they've won, but it's really people that are referred to us almost in a way. Like we'll hear from our photographers, from our writers, and they'll tell us like, hey, I heard about this person, or I have this friend who I think has a great story. And a lot of the times we'll get on these calls and they let us know that it's the first time somebody has interviewed them, and you're kind of sitting there across the screen and you're hearing about them, and you think how you leave that call, and we always leave with a smile on our face, because you learn so much from somebody, and a lot of the times like they don't even realize how much of an impact they make on us, and then on the people that are going to end up reading these stories. And I think that's why that's been a very big part of what we do as ClubEleven, right? The storytelling is, because we feel like that's almost it's our most I guess truthful way to make an impact, because it's what we enjoy doing. We love talking to people. We love photography. We love video. And at the end of the day, all of that packaged together is like, we love telling a story. We love telling a good story. And there's so many good stories in the US. Like it's abundant. I don't think it's ever, you just have to talk to somebody and you'll learn something. And again, that's a big part of what we're doing. And yeah, I would say, to answer your question, I think 2020 was crucial to what you see today when it comes to stories. Because if it wasn't for all the time that we had then to plan and realize all the things that we realized, I don't think we would have made that change until maybe a few years down the line. We wouldn't have jumped into storytelling at that level. I'm not gonna sit here and like imagine when that would have happened, but I'm glad it happened, because it's been very rewarding, So yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, for me, when I watch sports, I'm not a gambler, so I don't have any action in a game. So it's all about the stories, right? And it's just so cool to know that you guys are profiling people that their stories matter and are interesting, and it just makes watching sports that much, or soccer in this case, that much more interesting to know what somebody is all about. And I'm obviously I'm an Arsenal fan, and they profiled James Madison kind of with a kid with cerebral palsy the other day, and I was like, I'm a James Madison fan now, and I can't possibly like James Madison because he plays for Tottenham. So it's that kind of stuff and emotional attachment that you get when people's stories are told, and that's so cool that you guys are doing that.
Thank you, man.
What am I missing? Asking about what you guys are trying to put out, and where you see it going. And I know that you have some corporate partnerships and that sort of thing, and how that's all like meshed together with your original mission of telling stories, and visually telling stories, and through the written word as well. But where is it going, and how has it developed since then?
Yeah, I mean, Roshan, feel free to take this one, because you've been, Roshan has been leading I would say the business side of things with us for a while now, and we have a few goals for the few years. So yeah, Roshan.
Yeah, it's a great question, Scott, and something that we put a lot of thought into. And honestly, the guys have been cranking for the last 6 months. And just to kind of give some context on my role, so I kind of mostly oversee strategy and operations, and I really enjoy that. I really enjoy kind of building teams, bringing good people together, and trying to actually go out and make shit happen, if you will. And having spent most of my career in kind of the more corporate world, you learn very fast, who's going to have your back and who's not. And it's something that ever since I stopped playing soccer, I always searched for with the teams I was a part of, the companies. And unfortunately, I just never found it. You might find one or two good people, within your team or your project. But you're always going to deal with challenging people. And over the years, you learn to deal with those people better. You learn about yourself. And ultimately, something that I think has put us in a good position to win is I think all of us are great leaders. Our energy kind of feeds off each other in unique ways. We're all kind of good at different things, but together, we always find a way to make it work. And I've known Gabe and Pablo now for probably 4-5 years, and really got to know them ironically over COVID. We met over social media. I was kind of doing my own little soccer thing, and I was following ClubEleven, and that's how the dialogue kind of started. At that time, I was working at a company, and very hyper focused on getting that new job and doing well, and working on my own personal side projects. But, one thing in the top of my mind for a long time is, where am I going to find this team? Where am I going to find people that have the same interests, see things very similarly, and also at the end of the day, most importantly, are going to be able to kind of grind and get shit done. And I think that's the beginning of any kind of success story, is really trying to build the foundation. And I got laid off from my job about February of last year, about a year from now. And as a 31-year-old, you're like, holy shit, like, what am I going to do? How am I going to pay the bills, kind of thing. I kind of approached it very differently. I was like, I'm going to take a few months to just chill out, enjoy life a little bit. And then I kind of jumped right back into applying for jobs. Honestly, did not have much success. I think I, had like 3 or 4 interviews, jobs I really wasn't too hyped about. But for me, that provided kind of this opportunity to kind of go to Gabe and Pablo and say, hey, guys, I have time now. I really don't want to go back to my 9 to 5. And I really am going to try everything I possibly can not to do that. And I was like, ClubEleven has something special here. I don't think we know what it is yet, but if we work on it and come up with a plan and a strategy and think about kind of the business as this journey of where we are now and where we want to go, we can kind of fill in the pieces. And the second we kind of started having those strategic conversations, the second I understood where the business was at a core level, and understand where the opportunities were, both keeping in mind the things we needed to do from a business standpoint, an internal standpoint, but then also understanding, where is this space going? I think for us, it was, we know we can create, but we need to be creating the right things at the right times. So last year was amazing because we went from zero, in my opinion, to the company generating revenue with big clients. And as we kind of reflected on the year, all these guys came up to Salem, where I live now. We kind of have kind of this, next year planning, if you will. Just get together, talk about the year, talk about next year. That was our second year doing it this past November. And it was really important because I think we understood, man, back in March of 2023, like, there was really nothing coming in. And then you look at what we were able to achieve in a short period of time, being fully aware that Gabe and Pablo had been laying this foundation for many years before this. But really, it was our opportunity to say, hey, now is our time. And I will be honest, like, I've been very tough on Gabe and Pablo for the last 6 months, because I see the potential in what we're doing. And it's just a matter of time, I think, before a lot more people know who ClubEleven is and what we're trying to do. And at the end of the day, Scott, like, I'm not going to glorify my role. Honestly, I think it's just about having a plan and having the right people and being able to execute and hold each other accountable. And, now we've created this foundational structure where we all have our roles and responsibilities. We all know what the priorities for a given week are. And now we have more opportunities than we did at this time last year. So, in my head, it's a very structured way of organically trying to grow a business. And we've set milestones for ourselves to say, hey, come June, what do we want to be seeing from ClubEleven? What do we want our audience growth to look like? Where do we want revenue to be coming from? And at the very beginning, early days, I think I read this in a book once, but it's all about making your first $1.12. And $1.12 is like the example they use in the book, but it's all about making that first dollar. And for me with ClubEleven, it was, hey, let's make our first dollar. Because once we do that, I know we can make more. And we still have a long way to go, no doubt about it. But ClubEleven isn't this short term, hey, like let's see how big we can get, how much money we can make leading up to the World Cup. Because the truth is, a lot of people are doing that, and a lot of people won't be playing in this space after the World Cup. But really, our goal is we want to go out and create the most robust media brand in America, where if you're interested in video content, we have that. If you're interested in editorial, we have that. If you're interested in popping up at an event with us, to just meet new people and talk soccer, we're going to have that. And for me, this was really about understanding my own personal strengths, but then more importantly, understanding where our team strengths were and building kind of a plan around that. And, I think we've seen success with it. I think we're just getting started, but we're starting to hit our groove. Coming out of that meeting in November, we kind of had this internal discussion around, hey, let's take December just to kind of relax, enjoy the time with family, downtime. But come January 1, we have our plan and we need to move. And, we're here at the end of February and we've hit all the milestones we wanted to hit. And the good stuff is not even come yet. Like, we have a great plan for the next 2 months, for this summer. And I think a lot of people are going to see ClubEleven really start to make some moves. But it all started with the people, man. Like, I haven't really talked to Gabe. We don't talk about these things too often. But I was reflecting on kind of my journey with ClubEleven over the last few months. And, I stepped away from the game in and out post-college. Like I kind of had to get away from it, come back to it, played soccer in New York City. Really don't play too much here in Salem right now. But I view ClubEleven as an organization that helped me rediscover my passion for the game. And in a lot of ways, that's like the most valuable thing I can ever ask for. Because through that, I've met Gabe and Pablo. I've met so many other people. And there are now opportunities that we have as a team together that individually, I don't think we would ever imagine ourselves having. So in my head, like the most valuable thing is our team. The second most valuable thing is I think we're trying to grow the game the right way. And the third most valuable thing is we're just getting started, and that's what excites me about this year, next year and beyond. And, I know Gabe and Pablo share that same vision, but look, it hasn't been easy. Like, we've had tough conversations as a team, but at the end of the day, we figure out a way to come back together and align on what the priorities for the business and for our team should look like. And we're building something really special. I think, we're a bootstrap team, man. We're in Boston, we're in DC, we're in Charlotte, we're in Miami, and we have this entire network all across the country. And really the most, I think, magical thing is bringing everyone together. So something really important that I'll let Gabe kind of speak to is last November, we had an event in New York City on 11/11. And, we brought together 175 people, ClubEleven fans, dudes off the street that are just walking by saying, hey, what's going on? Coming out with the jersey that they bought upstairs, not even knowing about the event. And we just made it a fun, casual environment that was soccer themed, where, you know, we talked about soccer stories. We had a photo gallery, Q&A session, tacos, drinks, DJ. And at the end of the day, like, if we can bring more people together to enjoy this game, like, I can die a happy man, and we can all kind of get on with our lives. But we're not there yet, you know, like, we have so much more to accomplish that, yeah, we're dreamers, man. And I think that's why we get along well, is we're not satisfied with just hitting status quo. We want to do things bigger, and we want to do things better than they're already being done.
Talk about your event. What was that all about?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think Roshan put it perfectly there. The event was almost like it was also one of these things that make you just spark so many different ideas for what you want to do next. It was also a big way to almost cap off, you know, I think a good run of 5 years so far. The event, right? So we had a live interview with two very, you know, very special people to us, that we'd interviewed prior. You know, I think we had interviewed them 2 years before. It's Aleko Eskandarian and Andranik Eskandarian. So Andranik played in the NASL, and he had a, you know, great story, immigrant story. He then, you know, his son went to play for DC United. Aleko Eskandarian also, they both, you know, built their own careers, very how do you say it, illustrious careers. But outside of that, they both have a very deep connection to the sport here, right? I mean, Aleko is now working in, I'm pretty sure, directly with the academies, or something related to that, with MLS. And then Andranik, you know, has stories from back in the day where you can see what kind of impact he was having on the community. I think for me, one of the biggest takeaways from his story was, you know, he told us about a time very, very long ago. No, I'm kidding. It was, you know, just it was in the 70s, right? And he was telling us about a time when the team, right, the Cosmos, would go to parks, like just community parks, and they would put a table and just sign stuff. Like, kids would come out, they held clinics, like all this type of stuff. And no wonder, I mean, their stadium's packed out. Obviously, I mean, I know they had Pele, but even him, right? I mean, he was going out to the community and kind of giving back, and that's always, sometimes it's enough to get a kid to enjoy the sport and get into it, right? And so they both, you know, they spoke about their own stories. We had them on a panel. Pablo was running the interview, and it was about an hour of that conversation. And we felt like it was, you know, a perfect example of what we're trying to get across. I mean, that was like most of our stories, right? Pablo is the one doing the interview through either Zoom or in person, and he's the only one that gets to hear the raw, just story, straight up, minute by minute. And then the way I describe it is, you know, we not like dilute it, but the final reader gets to see the final version. Like, they get to see a story that is maybe 5 minutes long on text, long form, and if it's a video, you know, you'll get 2.5, 5 minutes. Still edited though, right? You don't get to hear all the sound bites, all the ums, all the likes, and all of that. And I think having that conversation live in person, and having, you know, close to 200 people hearing that and seeing how they reacted to it, you know, people, you know, laughing at their anecdotes, people learning about what soccer was back then, and then what, you know, people like Aleko and many others are doing to progress it in present time, was really special. And for us to share that night with people that have built everything that led up to that night, right? You know, our team of photographers, writers, videographers, our close friends, our families, that a big majority of them were there. You know, they showed up that night, and to be able for all of us to look at you know, that night, to hear that story together. And also, you know, we had a gallery of photos. We watched the NWSL final together that night, but looking around was really special because you got to share that moment with everybody that built that. And I think a lot of us there, I think a lot of people there, like they felt like they had a part in basically getting to that moment. You know, they created that moment. We all did it together, and for me, and I think kind of what Roshan was getting to was that event. It's really something that we want to keep doing. Not in terms of like events in general, but like telling stories in that way and having that type of impact. You know, be it in person, be it through video, through through a podcast. We want to keep doing more of that, and I think the event was just a really good way to see, like, wow, you know, there's seeing live reactions and seeing, wow, like, you know, this, we all built this together. And so, yeah, when it comes to the actual, you know, to my takeaways, at least from that event, was that I loved hearing that story in particular, just because of what it meant to people. But also, it was really cool to see that from older generations. I mean, my dad was there, and he's 60, he's turning 65, and then my little brother was there, and he was, I think he was 18 at the time. And so you have all these people kind of in the same room, same night. They're all enjoying the same things, the same gallery, the same story. But you know, there wasn't any like, oh, it's just for this, you know, age group, this demographic, this whatever. I mean, that night we had everything that we think encompasses soccer here in the US. And it's really cool seeing like people learn about other things that maybe they hadn't looked into. That was my biggest takeaway, right? It was, I think everybody left that night with something new, and something that maybe they could go home and be like, wow, like that was actually very, very interesting. So yeah, that was a special night, man.
It's important, like, to keep the stories coming, you know, from the New York Cosmos and that whole league, and that crazy wild west, you know, pioneering
don't get me started on that.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, kids now who are involved in the game don't necessarily know about that stuff, and or the beginning of the MLS and how important those players were to springboard the game to where it is now. And it's awesome that you guys are telling those stories too.
No, yeah, like to your point, like a lot of people, I think, pioneered like what we see today. We've spent, you know, a big part of what we're doing now is we relaunched our newsletter, and that's almost in direct relation to what you just mentioned, right? Like we're trying to highlight more of those stories that now we don't have access, like, you know, we don't have access to photography from back then, or we can't go out and go back in time and do an interview from that point of view. So we can't do it in the mediums that we're used to. But our newsletter is a way to bring those to light, because we spent the last 3 months honestly looking very, like, reading a lot and watching a lot of what soccer was back from the 70s to I think the early 2000s. I feel like what happened with the Open Cup and MLS was a big reason as to why we did that. When I moved down here to Miami in December, and I have these really good friends that run Golazo Kids. They've told me countless stories about the Fort Lauderdale Strikers. I've met a lot of people here that still remember like those eras. You know, you remember the Tampa Bay Mutiny, Miami Sharks, like a bunch of teams that, I mean, yeah, some people know about them, and I think I had heard about them as well. But the more and more you learn about what these teams did to lay the foundation that we see today, it's like it's super important. And sometimes it's almost like it's disheartening that, you know, you hear about it and you're like, wow, how did I not, you know, how is it possible that I didn't know about this? Like there's so much, man, so much. It's crazy.
Yep, for sure. What am I missing, you guys?
I think we touched on a lot.
I don't want to take it. I know we're over an hour.
But obviously, we've talked about you guys. You have an announcement coming out fairly soon, so you can come back on and tell us about that too, because I think that's a really cool thing.
Sure.
So
we will, for sure.
yeah, I'm super appreciative of what you guys are doing. I'm a consumer of it, so keep going, man. I
Thank
love
you.
it.
We appreciate you,
Oh
Scott.
yeah,
Thanks for having us.
thank you, Scott, for having us,
Yeah,
man. Really
yeah.
appreciate it.
All right, hold on one sec. All right.